Did you know that right now, in February 2026, there are new immigration rules that could affect your green card status without you even realizing it? If you're a permanent resident and you haven't checked the latest updates, you could be putting your status at risk. This isn't about scaring you. This is about making sure you know what's changed, what you need to do, and how to protect everything you've worked so hard to achieve in the United States. And before I show you exactly what's changing, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Why? Because in the next few weeks, I'll be breaking down every single update that could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars. These are the kinds of changes that don't wait for you to catch up. If you're subscribed, you'll know about them before they become your problem. Don't miss it. So here's what's happening. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, has rolled out several new regulations and policy updates specifically targeting green card holders in 2026. Some of these changes affect how you maintain your status, others affect how you travel, and a few could even impact your path to citizenship if that's something you're planning for. The reason this matters right now is because some of these rules have already gone into effect, and others are coming very soon. Let me be clear about something. Having a green card doesn't mean you're completely safe from immigration consequences. A lot of people think that once they have that card, they're good forever. That's not true. There are responsibilities that come with permanent residence, and if you don't follow them, you can lose your status. The new rules in 2026 make some of those responsibilities stricter, and they also add a few new ones that weren't there before. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what these changes are, how they affect you personally, and what steps you need to take right now to make sure you stay protected. We're going to cover travel requirements, renewal procedures, employment obligations, tax responsibilities, and the brand new compliance verification system that USCIS just launched. Let's get into it. The first big change you need to know about is the updated re-entry permit and travel documentation requirements. Now, if you're a green card holder, you already know that you're supposed to live in the United States. That's the whole point of permanent residence. But life happens. Maybe you have family abroad. Maybe you have business obligations. Maybe there's an emergency. Whatever the reason, if you need to leave the country for an extended period, the rules about how long you can stay away have gotten more strict. Here's what used to happen. You could leave the United States for up to 6 months without much issue. If you were gone for more than 6 months but less than a year, immigration officers might question you when you came back, but most people got through. If you were gone for more than a year without a re-entry permit, that's when you'd almost certainly have problems. That was the old understanding. Now here's what's changed in 2026. USCIS is paying much closer attention to absences that are longer than 6 months, even if they're less than a year. They're looking at patterns. If you keep leaving for 5 months, coming back for a few weeks, and then leaving again for another 5 months, they're going to start treating that as abandonment of your permanent residence. They're asking more questions at the border, they're requesting more documentation, and in some cases, they're issuing notices to appear in immigration court. Let me give you a real example so you understand how this plays out. Imagine you're a green card holder who travels back to your home country every year to see your aging parents. You usually stay for about 4 or 5 months at a time. Under the old system, you might have gotten a few questions at the airport, but generally, you'd be fine. Under the new 2026 rules, if this has been your pattern for the past 2 or 3 years, an immigration officer could pull you aside and start asking serious questions about whether you actually live in the United States. They might look at whether you have a job here, whether you pay taxes here, whether your family is here. If they're not satisfied with your answers, they could refer you to a secondary inspection or even start removal proceedings. So what should you do? First, if you know you're going to be outside the United States for more than 6 months, apply for a re-entry permit before you leave. This permit is valid for up to 2 years, and it shows USCIS that you intend to return. You have to apply while you're still in the United States, and you have to do your biometrics appointment here, but after that, you can leave and receive the permit abroad. The application fee is currently $560, so factor that into your planning. Second, even if you're not planning to be gone that long, keep strong ties to the United States. Maintain a home here. Keep your job if possible. File your taxes every year. Keep bank accounts and credit cards active. Keep utility bills in your name. These are the things immigration officers look at when they're deciding if you've abandoned your residence. And here's something most people don't realize. Starting in March 2026, USCIS is implementing a new system where they can request additional evidence about your travel patterns even before you leave the country. If they see that you've been making frequent long trips, they might send you a request for evidence asking you to prove that you still maintain your primary residence in the United States. This is brand new. It's never happened before, but it's happening now, and you need to be prepared for it. Now, here's where it gets even more important. The second major change affects green card renewal and the 10-year expiration rule. Your physical green card expires every 10 years. That's always been the case, but your actual permanent resident status doesn't expire unless you abandon it or it gets taken away. The card is just a document. What's new in 2026 is that USCIS is being much stricter about the renewal process, and they're using it as an opportunity to review your entire immigration history. When you file Form I-90 to renew your green card, USCIS is now conducting more thorough background checks than they used to. They're looking at your travel history. They're checking your tax returns. They're verifying your employment. They're even looking at your social media in some cases. Why are they doing this? Because they want to make sure that you've been maintaining your status properly for the past 10 years. Here's what this means for you practically. If your green card is expiring in 2026, don't wait until the last minute to file for renewal. USCIS recommends filing Form I-90 6 months before your card expires. But with the new review procedures, I'm telling you to file even earlier if possible. Give yourself at least 8 to 9 months. The processing times have gotten longer because of these additional checks. Right now, in February 2026, the average processing time for a green card renewal is about 8 to 12 months in most service centers. That's up from 6 to 8 months just last year. And here's the thing that catches people off guard. If USCIS finds something concerning during your renewal review, they can schedule you for an in-person interview. This didn't used to happen very often for simple renewals, but now it's becoming more common. At that interview, they're going to ask you detailed questions about where you've been living, what you've been doing, how you've been supporting yourself. If you've spent significant time outside the United States, if you've had gaps in employment, if there are any discrepancies in your records, they're going to dig into that. Let me tell you what happened to someone I know about. This person had a green card for about 9 years. They traveled quite a bit for work, sometimes spending 3 or 4 months at a time overseas. When they filed to renew their green card, USCIS sent them a notice for an interview. At the interview, the officer asked for proof of where they lived, copies of tax returns, employment letters, bank statements, everything. The person brought all the documents and eventually got approved, but it took almost 14 months total. The point is, don't assume renewal is automatic. It's not anymore. Quick question, are you subscribed yet? Because here's the thing, most people who watch this video will forget about it in a day or two. But if you subscribe, you'll get reminders every time something new comes up that could affect your license, your wallet, or your status. It takes 2 seconds. Just tap that button. All right, let's talk about the third major change, and this one is really significant. It's about employment and the new work verification requirements for green card holders. Now, when you have a green card, you have the right to work anywhere in the United States. That's one of the main benefits of permanent residence. But what's changed in 2026 is that USCIS is now cross-referencing employment data with other government agencies more aggressively than ever before. Here's how this works. Every time you work for an employer, they report your wages to the IRS and the Social Security Administration. USCIS has always had access to this information, but they didn't always use it actively. Starting this year, they're using automated systems to flag potential issues. For example, if you're a green card holder and you show long periods of unemployment with no clear explanation, USCIS might send you a letter asking you to explain. If you claim to live in the United States but your tax returns show very little income and you're not receiving government benefits, they might question whether you're really living here. This is especially important if you're planning to apply for citizenship in the future. When you file Form N-400 for naturalization, USCIS reviews your entire history as a permanent resident. If there are red flags in your employment record, they will ask about it. They want to see that you've been a productive member of society. They want to see that you've been supporting yourself legally. So what does this mean for you practically? First, make sure you're filing your tax returns every single year, even if you don't owe any taxes. A lot of green card holders make the mistake of thinking they don't need to file if their income is below a certain threshold. That's not true. As a permanent resident, you're required to file a tax return if you meet the income requirements, and filing shows that you're complying with U.S. law. Second, if you go through a period of unemployment, keep documentation of what you were doing during that time, Were you going to school? Were you taking care of a family member? Were you looking for work? Keep proof of these activities because you might need to show them later. And here's something new that started in January 2026. If you're a green card holder who works remotely for a company based outside the United States, USCIS wants to make sure you're actually physically present in the US while you're doing that work. There have been cases where people had green cards, worked remotely for foreign companies, and spent most of their time living abroad. USCIS is cracking down on this. If you're in this situation, make absolutely sure you're spending more time in the United States than outside of it. Keep records of where you are. Keep utility bills, lease agreements, credit card statements that show you're actually living here. Now let's move to the fourth change, and this is one that surprised a lot of people. It's about the new Permanent Resident Compliance Verification System. This is a brand new program that USCIS launched in late 2025, and it's fully operational now in 2026. Here's what it does. USCIS can now randomly select green card holders for a compliance review at any time. Not just when you're renewing your card, not just when you're applying for citizenship, anytime. If you get selected for a compliance review, you'll receive a notice in the mail. The notice will tell you that USCIS is conducting a routine review of your permanent resident status, and it will ask you to submit various documents within 60 days. These documents typically include copies of your passport with entry and exit stamps, your tax returns for the past 3 years, proof of your current address, proof of employment or other means of support, and a written statement explaining your activities as a permanent resident. Now, I want to be clear. This doesn't mean USCIS suspects you of anything wrong. This is a random review. It's like a random audit from the IRS. It doesn't mean you did something bad. It just means they're checking. But here's the important part. If you don't respond to the notice, or if you respond late, or if the documents you provide raise red flags, USCIS can initiate removal proceedings against you. Let me pause here for just a moment. If this information is already helping you, imagine getting updates like this every single day. That's exactly what subscribers get. Clear, simple, no-nonsense updates on everything that matters. Go ahead and subscribe now so you never miss critical information. So how do you handle a compliance review if you get selected? First, don't panic. This is a normal procedure now. Second, respond as quickly as possible. You have 60 days, but don't wait until day 59. As soon as you get the notice, start gathering your documents. Third, be thorough. Give them everything they ask for and more. If they ask for 3 years of tax returns, give them all the years you have. If they ask for proof of address, give them multiple documents like utility bills, bank statements, and lease agreements. The more evidence you provide that you're maintaining your status properly, the better. And here's a tip that immigration attorneys are giving right now. If you receive a compliance review notice and anything in your situation is complicated, consider talking to an immigration lawyer before you respond. For example, if you've been traveling a lot, if you've had gaps in employment, if you've had any run-ins with law enforcement, if anything in your history might raise questions, get professional help. It's better to address potential issues proactively than to wait for USCIS to find them and ask questions later. The fifth major change involves criminal offenses and the expanded grounds for removal. This has always been an area where green card holders need to be extremely careful. Even though you have permanent residence, certain criminal convictions can still get you deported. What's changed in 2026 is that USCIS and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, are working together more closely than before to identify green card holders who have criminal records. Here's what you need to understand. There are 2 main categories of crimes that can affect your green card. First are crimes of moral turpitude. These are crimes that involve dishonesty, fraud, or intent to harm someone. Examples include theft, fraud, assault, and domestic violence. Second are aggravated felonies. This is a specific immigration law term, and it includes serious crimes like murder, rape, drug trafficking, and certain theft or fraud offenses involving more than $10,000. If you're convicted of 1 crime of moral turpitude within 5 years of being admitted to the United States, or if you're convicted of 2 or more crimes of moral turpitude at any time, you can be deported. If you're convicted of an aggravated felony, you will almost certainly be deported, and you'll be barred from ever returning to the United States. What's new in 2026 is that USCIS is getting automatic notifications when green card holders are arrested or convicted of crimes. In the past, there might have been a delay before immigration authorities found out. Now it's almost immediate. They're also going back and reviewing old cases. If you were convicted of something years ago and you're still a permanent resident, they might take action now even if they didn't before. Here's a real scenario that's playing out right now. Let's say you got a DUI, a driving under the influence charge, 5 years ago. You paid your fine, did your community service, completed your probation, you thought it was over. But now, in 2026, if you apply to renew your green card or apply for citizenship, USCIS is going to look at that DUI very carefully. In most cases, a single DUI won't get you deported. But if you had multiple DUIs, or if there were aggravating factors like a very high blood alcohol level or an accident that hurt someone, you could be in serious trouble. So what should you do? First, if you have any criminal history at all, even something minor like a shoplifting charge from years ago, talk to an immigration attorney before you apply for anything with USCIS. Get a legal opinion on whether that conviction could affect your status. Second, stay out of trouble. I know that sounds obvious, but it's worth saying. Even minor offenses can have major immigration consequences. Third, if you do get arrested for anything, contact an immigration attorney immediately, even before you deal with your criminal defense attorney. The immigration consequences might be worse than the criminal penalties, and you need someone who understands both sides. Before I continue, I need to mention something. The people who stay updated on these changes are the ones who avoid problems before they happen. If you're not subscribed, you're relying on luck. Don't do that. Hit subscribe right now and join thousands of people who stay ahead instead of playing catch up. Now let's talk about the sixth change, and this one affects people who are planning to apply for citizenship. If becoming a U.S. citizen is in your future plans, you need to know about the new continuous residence and physical presence requirements that USCIS is enforcing much more strictly in 2026. To apply for citizenship, you generally need to have been a permanent resident for at least 5 years. That's 3 years if you got your green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen and you're still married. But it's not just about having the card for 5 years. You also need to show that you've been continuously residing in the United States during that time, and that you've been physically present for at least half of that period. Here's what continuous residence means. You can't take any single trip outside the United States that lasts a year or more. If you do, you break your continuous residence, and you have to start the 5-year clock all over again. You also need to show that you intended to make the United States your permanent home during the entire 5-year period. Physical presence is different. This is about the total number of days you've been in the United States. For a 5-year green card holder applying for citizenship, you need to have been physically present for at least 30 months out of the 60 months before you apply. That's half the time. For a 3-year green card holder married to a U.S. citizen, you need 18 months out of 36 months. What's changed in 2026 is that USCIS is calculating these requirements much more carefully. They're requesting travel records from Customs and Border Protection. They're looking at your passport stamps. They're counting days very precisely. And if you're even a few days short of the physical presence requirement, they will deny your citizenship application. Let me give you an example of how this can go wrong. Imagine you've had your green card for 5 years and 2 months. You think you're ready to apply for citizenship, but during those 5 years, you traveled internationally for work quite a bit. Maybe you spent a week here, 2 weeks there, a month somewhere else. You never took a trip longer than 6 months, so you didn't think you had a problem. But when you add up all those days outside the United States, it comes to 32 months. That means you were only physically present for 28 months out of the past 60. You're 2 months short of the requirement. Your application will be denied, and you'll have to wait longer before you can reapply. Here's what you need to do if you're planning to apply for citizenship in the next year or two. Start tracking your travel now. Get a calendar or a spreadsheet and mark every single day you were outside the United States for the past 5 years. Count them up. Make sure you meet the physical presence requirement before you file your application. If you're close to the line, wait a few more months until you're safely over the requirement. The filing fee for citizenship is currently $760, and you don't want to waste that money on an application that's going to get denied. Also, be aware that USCIS can ask you about the purpose of every trip you took. If you took a 4-month trip to your home country, they might ask why. Was it for a vacation? Was it to take care of a sick relative? Was it for work? Have documentation ready to explain your travel. Letters from employers, medical records from family members, anything that shows you had legitimate reasons for being away and that you always intended to return to the United States. The seventh and final major change I want to talk about involves address change requirements and the consequences of not updating your information. This might sound like a small thing, but it's actually very important. As a green card holder, you're required by law to report any change of address to USCIS within 10 days of moving. This requirement has existed for a long time, but in 2026, USCIS is actually enforcing it. Here's why this matters. If USCIS sends you mail at your old address and you don't receive it, you could miss important notices. You could miss a request for evidence. You could miss a compliance review notice. You could miss an interview appointment. And if you miss these things because you didn't update your address, USCIS is not going to be sympathetic. They're going to assume you're avoiding them, and they could take action against your status. Updating your address is easy. You can do it online through the USCIS website using Form AR11. You can also do it by mail. Just make sure you do it every single time you move, even if you're moving temporarily. If you move from one apartment to another in the same city, report it. If you move in with a family member for a few months, report it. Keep your address current at all times. And here's something else that's new in 2026. USCIS is now cross-checking the address you have on file with them against the address on your tax returns, your driver's license, and other government records. If they see discrepancies, they might send you a notice asking you to clarify where you actually live. This goes back to the whole issue of making sure you're maintaining your residence in the United States. If your USCIS address says you live in California, but your tax return says you live in Texas, and your driver's license is from Florida, they're going to have questions. So keep everything consistent. Use the same address across all your government documents, and if you do need to use different addresses for some legitimate reason, be prepared to explain why. Real quick, if you're finding this helpful, you're not alone. Thousands of subscribers rely on this channel every day to stay informed. Be part of that group. Subscribe now, and you'll always know what's coming before it hits you. Now let's talk about what you should actually do with all this information. I've given you a lot of details about what's changed, but I want to make sure you know the specific steps you need to take right now to protect yourself. First, review your travel history for the past 5 years. Get out your passport and look at all the entry and exit stamps. Write down the dates of every trip you took outside the United States. Calculate how many total days you've been outside the country. If you're approaching the limits I talked about earlier, be more careful about future travel. Consider staying in the United States more consistently for the next year or two until you're well within the safe zone. Second, make sure your address is up to date with USCIS. Log into your USCIS online account and verify that the address they have on file is correct. If it's not, update it immediately using Form AR11. Don't put this off. Do it today. Third, check the expiration date on your green card. If it's expiring within the next 12 months, start the renewal process now. Don't wait until the last minute. File Form I-90, pay the fee, and give yourself plenty of time for processing. Gather your supporting documents ahead of time, get passport photos taken, have copies of your previous green cards and immigration documents ready. Fourth, organize your financial and tax records. Make sure you filed tax returns for every year you've been a permanent resident. If you missed a year, file it now, even if it's late. Get copies of all your returns and keep them in a safe place. If USCIS ever questions your status, these documents will be crucial evidence that you've been living in the United States and complying with the law. Fifth, if you have any criminal history, consult with an immigration attorney as soon as possible. Don't wait until USCIS asks about it. Get ahead of the issue. Find out whether your past convictions could affect your current status or your future applications. If there's a problem, there might be legal remedies available, but you need to act before USCIS takes action against you. Sixth, be smart about your online presence. USCIS is increasingly looking at social media accounts during their reviews. If you're constantly posting photos from abroad, if you're talking about living in another country, if you're making statements that suggest you don't really live in the United States, that could be used against you. I'm not saying you can't post on social media. I'm just saying be aware that immigration officers might look at it. Seventh, keep documentation of your ties to the United States. This means keeping copies of your lease or mortgage, utility bills, bank statements, credit card statements, employment records, anything that shows you have a real life here. Keep at least 3 years of these documents in an organized file. If you ever need to prove that you've maintained your residence, you'll be glad you have everything ready. And finally, stay informed about future changes. Immigration law is constantly evolving. What's true today might change tomorrow. The best way to protect yourself is to stay educated and stay aware of what's happening. That's why channels like this exist, and that's why staying subscribed is so important. Here's the bottom line. Being a green card holder comes with real responsibilities. It's not a set it and forget it situation. You have to actively maintain your status by following the rules, keeping your information current, and being aware of changes in the law. The new rules in 2026 make these responsibilities even more serious. USCIS is watching more closely, they're enforcing more strictly, and they have better tools to catch people who aren't complying. But here's the good news. If you do what you're supposed to do, if you follow the rules, if you maintain your residence properly, you have nothing to worry about. These changes are designed to catch people who are abusing the system or not taking their permanent residence seriously. If you're living in the United States, working here, paying your taxes, and following the law, you're going to be fine. Don't let fear paralyze you. Use this information to empower yourself. Now you know what USCIS is looking at. Now you know what they're checking for. Now you know what steps you need to take. Knowledge is power, and you now have the knowledge you need to protect your status and your future in the United States. The most important thing is to be proactive. Don't wait for problems to come to you. Address potential issues before they become actual issues. Keep your records organized. Stay on top of deadlines. And if you're ever unsure about something, get professional help. The cost of talking to an immigration attorney is nothing compared to the cost of losing your green card. And remember, your green card isn't just a piece of plastic. It represents years of effort, sacrifice, and investment in your life here in America. It's your ticket to building a future, to providing for your family, to eventually becoming a citizen if you choose. Don't let small mistakes or lack of knowledge put that at risk. If this video helped you understand what's happening and what to do about it, make sure you're subscribed so you catch the next one. I'll be covering more updates that directly affect you, including upcoming changes to the citizenship process, new IRS reporting requirements for foreign accounts, and updates to work authorization rules. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a family member, a friend, a coworker who has a green card, send this video to them. This information could save them from serious problems down the road. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.